some topics no one wants to talk about, not because they're unimportant, but because they make us feel exposed, vulnerable, with nowhere left to hide. Sexual sin is one of those topics. For some people, just hearing the words sexual sin makes their mind put up a wall. For others, it stirs memories that were never healed, experiences they've spent years trying to bury, justify, or pretend never happened. What about you? Where are you in all of this? Are you someone who has moved on? Are you still struggling? Or are you the one who lives with the quiet thought, I don't have a problem. I'm not here to condemn you. I'm not here to preach morals at you either. I'm here as someone who's walked this road, not in theory, but in reality through my own mistakes, and long nights wondering, why did I lose myself? Just to satisfy a moment. And if something I'm saying is stirring something inside you, I want you to know this. You're not alone. And what you're going through is not your destiny. There are times we mistake sexual freedom for liberation. We learn from movies, social media, even from the people around us, that satisfying our desires is part of living our truth. That only old-fashioned people talk about boundaries. That love is love. Sex is sex, as long as both sides consent. But very few people talk about what happens after the thrill, after the reckless night, after that brief high. That leaves behind a deep emptiness. That emptiness you can't fill with another relationship. That emptiness you try to forget with work, with success, with short-lived fun, but it always comes back when you're alone. Have you ever asked yourself, why are the people who sleep around the easiest often the loneliest? Why do those who chase pleasure the most often feel the most drained? There's a truth that most of us avoid. Sex is not just a physical act, it's an exchange. It's energy tied to the soul, to the psyche, and to your sense of worth. And if you keep giving that part of yourself away easily, to people who have no intention beyond using it for themselves, then eventually you will lose the ability to believe you deserve deep, genuine love. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Never let anyone take your dignity from you, even if they try to do it sweetly." I know. Maybe you didn't want to hear this. Maybe there's a part of you that's resisting right now. You want to skip this video. You want something lighter, more positive, something that doesn't ask you to face the darker parts of yourself. I understand. Society teaches us how to cover up more than how to confront. We've learned how to perform happiness, but no one taught us how to look straight at our addiction to pleasure and admit how it's slowly eroding our self-respect. Stoicism doesn't ask you to kill desire. It only asks one very honest question. The thing you keep doing again and again, is it making you stronger or weaker? Is it helping you gain control or lose it? Because if not, then you're no longer steering the ship. You're living like a boat with no rudder, tossed around by every wave of desire. And the danger is, those waves always feel sweet in the beginning. They make you believe you're free. But over time, you start to feel like you need them to feel worthy. You start believing you're only attractive when someone lusts after your body. You start forgetting how to love without desire. You start fearing silence, fearing stillness, fearing being alone. Because without someone to touch you, you no longer know who you are. And that's when you realize you've been losing yourself for longer than you knew. I'm not telling you these things to make you feel ashamed. I'm saying them so that you can ask yourself honestly, courageously, what am I using my body to serve? Am I chasing desire or being dragged by it? Am I still in control? In those moments I call love. Or am I just trying to fill a void I'm too afraid to look into? If you've stayed with me this far, then I know you're braver than you think. This journey isn't easy. It's not for those looking for comfort. It's for those who are ready to slowly untangle the knots inside them that no one else sees. In the next parts, I won't just name the 7 sexual sins that have quietly wrecked the inner world of millions of people. I'll walk with you through how Stoicism can help you stand up again without needing to erase your past, without pretending you were innocent, without begging anyone to accept you. Just one thing is needed: honesty and the courage to begin again. If you're ready, take a deep breath and keep walking with me in the next chapter. There's a strange irony in our world today. We live in a society that talks constantly about sex, but very few people know how to talk about it with any sense of dignity. We see naked bodies everywhere, on phone screens, in roadside ads, on magazine covers. We hear friends talk about one-night stands like they're trophies. We watch movies where sex scenes are just standard entertainment. We swipe, match, message sometimes with strangers without ever looking up from our phones. And yet, has anyone ever taught us how to protect our dignity in a world flooded with desire? Has anyone ever asked us what's really happening inside our soul after each physical encounter? Has anyone ever told you that sex doesn't make you bad, but stepping into it without awareness is what makes you slowly lose yourself? That is why this video exists. Not to make you feel guilty, but to give you a safe space to name the things you've never dared to face. Because here's the truth. Most of us started engaging in sexual behavior far too early, but far too late in understanding how it affects our inner world. We did it out of curiosity, to prove something, out of loneliness, out of the need to be touched, because we felt it was about time, because everyone else was doing it, because the other person expected it. But very rarely did we pause to ask, am I doing this from a place of freedom or from a fear of being left behind? That's where the danger lies. Not in the action, but in the motive. Not in desire, but in letting it lead the way without ever asking, is this path taking me where I actually want to go? Stoicism never condemns désir. It simply reminds us, if you don't master your desires, they will master you. And when that happens, you start falling into a pattern. You crave love, but give your body to someone who doesn't love you. You long for connection, but sleep with someone who doesn't even see the real you. You think you're being true to your feelings, yet find yourself constantly pretending you don't care every time someone leaves. You're not broken. You've just never been told this. Physical intimacy without emotional commitment will always fracture the soul in places you don't see at first. And if you repeat that cycle enough times, you'll start going numb. You'll stop feeling anything. You'll stop believing in deep relationships. You'll stop opening your heart, because somewhere, deep in your unconscious mind, you've trained yourself to believe every relationship is just a trade give, take, then disappear. And so, you start living in this strange paradox. You crave intimacy, but fear being hurt. You want deep connection, but keep your distance so you don't become dependent. You want love, but no longer believe that anyone could love you without expecting something in return. All these fractures, they don't come from desire. They come from a lack of self-awareness, from being pulled too far away from your true values because you were too afraid to say what you really needed. Have you ever asked yourself, have I ever had sex just because I was afraid they'd leave if I said no? Have I ever ignored my own emotions just to keep someone around, someone who didn't even respect me? If your answer is yes, you're not wrong. You're carrying an unnamed wound, and like every wound, it needs to be seen before it can begin to heal. I want you to understand this. You were not born to be anyone's form of entertainment, and you don't need to offer your body like a ticket to be loved. You are a whole human being, and you deserve a love that is whole, too. not just a patchwork of physical moments, but a connection that touches the soul. Stoicism teaches us, never love someone so much that you forget to keep your own self-control. To love is to give, not to lose yourself. And sex, when entered into with awareness, can be sacred. But when it's driven by fear, by low self-worth, or by a habit of chasing quick pleasure, it slowly wears down your spirit. That's why we need to talk about sexual sins, not to judge anyone else, but to wake up inside our own behavior, to take a real look and ask ourselves, which of these things is actually wounding me? And why do I keep repeating them? You don't need anyone to tell you what's right or wrong. Your soul, if you listen long enough, already knows. And if you've made it this far, I believe something inside you has already begun to awaken. In the next part, I'll walk you through the clearest signs of how distorted sexuality is slowly destroying our inner freedom, without us even realizing it, not with loud accusations, but through real stories, simple but powerful enough to shake something deep inside. If you're ready, walk with me, one step at a time. No need to rush, just stay awake. There's a strange paradox unfolding in today's world. We live in an age where almost every boundary has been blurred. Between personal freedom and traditional values, the lines are fading. And the more they fade, the easier it becomes to lose our way. There was a time when sex was spoken of as something sacred, tied to marriage, commitment, and reverence. Today, sex is marketed like a commodity, not just in movies, advertisements, or adult websites, but in everyday conversations, in memes, in messages, in music, even in the way society reacts to a sex scandal more with curiosity than reflection. Have you ever asked yourself, how did one of the most intimate, sacred, and deeply bonding human experiences become something we consume, exchange, or casually enjoy without any real accountability? The answer lies here. We live in a culture that glorifies short-term pleasure and avoids long-term awareness. We call sleeping with someone a necessary life experience. We talk about opening up emotionally while treating Tinder like a finger-swiping game. We encourage freedom to love, but rarely teach people how to take responsibility for the emotional wreckage left behind after every goodbye. We celebrate natural instincts, but no one asks whether those instincts might be quietly destroying us from within. And here's the danger. When something wrong is repeated often enough, it starts to look normal. When a value is distorted long enough, we forget how beautiful it once was. And so, we begin living in a society where depth is seen as weakness, and shallow behaviors are celebrated as confidence or self-expression. No one blinks anymore when a couple lives together without commitment. No one sees anything wrong with a man having a mistress. No one questions a woman posting sexualized photos. It's her freedom of expression. No one reacts when people spend hours consuming porn because everyone does it. But let's ask, since when did exposure become freedom? Since when did showing your body become easier than showing sincerity? Since when did a click replace a commitment? And since when did we start thinking sex was so normal? It's not even worth reflecting on. Stoicism won't sit here and condemn anyone, but Stoicism will ask you this. The thing you now call normal, is it actually leading you toward a life worth living? Look around. You've probably heard someone say, I don't need love, I just need sex. But if that's really all they need, why do they still feel empty after each hookup? Why do they still message their ex at 2 a.m.? Why do they still feel hurt when someone disappears without a word? This is what today's culture won't tell you. Sex isn't harmless. It's an experience that involves trust, openness, vulnerability, even the soul. And when you treat it like a game, you eventually become the one being played. You can't rely on a loose culture to teach you how to guard your dignity. You can't let social media define your worth through likes and comments. You can't let vulgar songs, sexualized media, or lost people drag you away from your truest self. Stoicism doesn't tell you to live a joyless life, but it does demand one thing: you must know exactly what is leading you. If you're doing something just because everyone does it, you're not living by reason. You're living by crowd. If you sleep with someone just to keep them from leaving, you're not loving. You're surrendering your self-respect. If you conform to a culture obsessed with pleasure, you will pay for it eventually, with an internal loss you won't know how to name. This world won't stop to teach you what's right. It'll just offer you more and more easy options. And if you don't have a strong inner foundation, you'll be swept away before you even realize it. That's why we need Stoicism, not to turn us into emotionless machines, but to help us become people who feel deeply, yet are not ruled by feelings, people who desire, but do not become slaves to desire. You can live in a chaotic world and still keep a pure soul. You can love without losing your reason. You can experience sex without letting it blur your dignity. But that only happens when you're fully awake. And to wake up, you must first recognize some things society now calls normal are actually stealing your inner freedom, little by little. In the next part, I'll walk you through the specifics, the 7 sexual sins that Stoicism views not from a religious lens, but from the lens of self-mastery. We'll examine each behavior not to label it right or wrong, but to ask a far more honest question: if I keep living this way, who am I becoming? There was a man, let's call him Thomas. He had everything society labels as stable: a dream job, a kind, faithful wife, 2 healthy kids, and a small house in the suburbs. He wasn't the cheating type. He wasn't lacking love at home. But one day, during a work trip far from home, Thomas did something he never thought he would. Just one night, one moment of weakness, one compromise, he told himself, was just this once. And what happened afterward? Nothing. No one found out. His wife never suspected a thing. His kids still hugged him goodnight. Life on the outside remained unchanged. But inside Thomas something had shifted. Not because he got caught, not because he felt crushed by guilt, but because from that moment on, he could no longer look himself in the mirror. No one needed to condemn him, because deep down, he knew he had broken something sacred. Stoicism doesn't use the word sin to shame you. It uses it to describe the moment you veer off your chosen path. And when you step off that path, even just once, the first thing you lose isn't someone else's trust. It's the alignment within your own soul. Adultery, in its narrowest sense, is betrayal of a spouse. But on a deeper level, it is a betrayal of a promise you once gave freely. A promise born from freedom. And when you break that promise, you fracture that very freedom. In Stoicism, actions are not as important as the motive behind them. And the motive behind infidelity is almost always one of 3 things: a fleeting desire, an emotion left unspoken, or a soul quietly starving from within. Thomas didn't cheat because he was evil. He cheated because something inside him had been neglected, because he lived too long without naming the loneliness in his marriage, because he allowed his life to drift on autopilot, never stopping to ask, am I still living with my partner or just living beside them? No one ever told Thomas, when a commitment is starved, it will go searching for a substitute, and that substitute often arrives softly, conveniently, believably, but dangerously. You might ask, is the one who cheats to be blamed or to be pitied? Stoicism would say, neither. They need to be awakened, because each time you betray something inside yourself, you silently drain the respect you hold for yourself. And once that respect is gone, you begin to live two lives. An outer world where you still smile, work, parent, and an inner world where you slowly fall apart, unnoticed. Adultery doesn't start the moment you sleep with someone else. It begins far earlier. When you hide your real feelings from your partner, when you remain silent as the distance grows, when you long to be understood but no longer speak up, and when that longing builds up enough, you begin to notice a new look, a different voice, a tempting moment to feel alive again. But what you call feeling alive might actually be an escape dressed in the costume of passion. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't let desire drag you like a beast. Ask it, who are you? What do you want from me? If you are awake, you'll see. Sex doesn't cure loneliness. Intensity doesn't replace emotional connection, and passion born of secrecy will eventually become a mental burden. You can spend years building a relationship and lose it all in one moment of lost self-control. The worst part, sometimes the hardest person to forgive, is yourself. Even when the other has already forgiven you. In the Stoic journey, repentance doesn't mean punishing yourself. It means restoring your integrity. You don't have to fall to your knees in tears. You just have to stand up and return to the path you once chose. No excuses, no justifications, no self-pity, but also no hiding from the truth. For Thomas, the healing began with a small decision. One evening, he sat down and wrote a letter to his wife, not to confess, but to be honest, to speak about his fears, his exhaustion, and how he had allowed a shadow to enter their marriage. It wasn't some dramatic revelation. It was a quiet, truthful report from a man who finally chose to return. And that is what Stoicism always teaches. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to stop running. In the next part, I'll talk about another common sexual misstep, one that's rarely judged, often normalized, yet still quietly destructive. Premarital sex and our habit of labeling sacred things as just normal stuff. We'll continue not to condemn, but to understand, and only through understanding can we finally walk free from the loops that keep us stuck. Her name is Claire, 24 years old, independent, educated, attractive. She knew how to capture attention. Relationships came to her easily. A suggestive text, a casual coffee date, and then it would stretch into the night. No one forced her. No one took advantage of her. She entered each encounter willingly, fully aware of safe sex practices, bodily autonomy, and even modern terms like open relationships. But the thing that left Claire unsettled had nothing to do with the physical. It was this. After every seemingly mature and consensual night of pleasure, she would sit in silence for a long time, not because someone had hurt her, but because she no longer felt anything worth remembering. She didn't remember his scent. She didn't recall the conversations. She wasn't even sure what she had beyond a body that had just been touched. Have you ever felt like that? Not exactly pain, not even sadness, just emptiness. Fornication, sex outside of marriage, no longer carries the same shame it once did. It's viewed as a personal choice, a rite of passage before settling down, a normal part of youthful freedom. People encourage each other to test compatibility. Sex is placed at the top of the relationship checklist. It's treated as natural, harmless, so long as it's responsible. But few people ever tell you this. The easier something is repeated, the more meaningless it can become. Stoicism doesn't condemn you for having had premarital sex. It simply invites you to ask one thing: am I moving closer to real intimacy or just getting used to no one staying long? Sex, when detached from commitment, may satisfy the body. But it doesn't build emotional memory. It doesn't anchor you to anyone at a soul level. It doesn't give you inner refuge. It only teaches you how to leave quickly, forget quickly, and live without leaving a trace. What's truly dangerous isn't the repetition, it's the person you become when it turns into a habit. You start building relationships like you're choosing from a menu. You begin measuring bodies instead of hearts. You grow afraid to speak honestly because you don't want to lose something you're not even sure you want. You start settling for less than you deserve, simply because you've gotten used to no one stays anyway. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desire, it is achieved by mastering it." Fornication isn't wrong if you're deeply aware of your reasons, but if you're doing it to fill a void, to hold on to someone, to avoid feeling left behind, then what you call freedom may just be another word for drifting. The sad part is, no one teaches you to see this early on. School doesn't teach it. Friends don't dare say it. Family avoids it. And culture. It repeats so many lies until you start calling them normal. But if you listen deep enough, you'll realize there is nothing wrong with desire. The danger comes only when desire is allowed to define your worth. Claire realized this after her 7th relationship in just 2 years. The man treated her well. He didn't lie. He didn't run. But she still couldn't open up. She had become so used to endings, she no longer knew how to hold on. So used to going to bed, she had forgotten how to wait. So used to feeling wanted, she had forgotten how to feel loved. And that was when she began rewriting her own rules for living, not for religion, not for morality, but because she wanted to be fully present in every connection, because she wanted to know what the other person really felt before entering each other's private world, because she wanted sex to be something deep again, not just the conclusion of a night, because she wanted to be remembered and valued even when the clothes were off. You don't need to become cold, you just need to become clear. Stoicism doesn't say, wait until marriage. It simply asks, are your mind, heart, and body truly in agreement? And if the answer is, I'm not sure, then stop, not out of shame, but to ask again, what is it that I truly need? Sex or deep connection? A moment or a person who will stay through the years? You have the right to choose, but choose with awareness. Because every repeated action shapes your identity, and if you want to be someone who is respected, grounded, not defined by your body, then it starts with how you treat your body. In the next part, I'll talk about something far more invisible but just as destructive, the sexual cravings that live in your mind and the habit of feeding them with artificial images. Have you ever found yourself drawn in by a glance, a fleeting moment, but one that lingered the whole day? A seductive look, a revealing outfit, a posture that stirred something nameless but unmistakable inside you. No one saw it. No one judged. It was just you and a mind quietly spinning entire scenarios behind that glance. But it didn't stop there. You began searching for that photo again. You started storing every tiny detail in your memory, the eyes, the waistline, the lips. You began imagining when you were alone, lying in bed, even at work. You told yourself it was harmless. You weren't doing anything wrong. You were just thinking, just wanting a little. But Stoicism won't let you stop there. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The things you think about repeatedly shape your character, and a mind soaked in lust will eventually shape how you see the world." You stop seeing people and start seeing bodies. You stop listening to words and start scanning for signals. You stop seeking connection and start chasing the image of what might happen in a closed room. Lust in its raw form is not the desire to love. It is the urge to possess, to consume, to conquer. It pulls you from wanting connection to wanting to touch, from wanting to understand to wanting to have, from admiring beauty to wanting to control it in your own way. And you won't notice when the change begins. Suddenly, no one seems attractive enough because your imagination has created an unrealistic standard. You no longer have the patience to love someone from within because desire has overpowered feeling. You lose the ability to respect others because your eyes now move faster than your heart. Stoicism doesn't ask you to live like a monk, but it demands that you guard your mind like a warrior, because the most dangerous enemy doesn't come from the outside. It grows from the thoughts you allow to take root and stay too long. You might think, it's just my imagination, it's just a glance. I just think that person is beautiful. But that's exactly how lust begins. Building a habit, and once the habit forms, you are no longer the one choosing, you are the one being led. Ask yourself, why do I no longer find people attractive unless they dress provocatively? Why can't I stop thinking about someone I only saw for a moment? Why do I feel more impatient, less respectful, and more irritable without some kind of stimulation in my day? These aren't caused by what you do. They come from a mind that has become used to living on lust. Claire, the woman you met in the last chapter, went through this phase. She didn't sleep around. She didn't watch porn. But she fed her imagination religiously. A muscular co-worker, a barista with a deep voice, an ex who once touched her in a way she couldn't forget. Every fantasy made her feel in control. But the more she imagined, the more real the fantasies became, and the more empty the real world felt. No one could reach her because she was already full of things that didn't exist. And when no one moved her anymore, she began to wonder, have I lost the ability to love? The truth, she hadn't. She had just become too familiar with loving an image rather than a human being. Lust makes you lonely in ways no one can see. You may be attractive, smart, sophisticated, but deep down, your mind has been trained to crave, not to connect, to view others through the lens of flesh, not character, to go too far because you've grown used to secretly letting yourself go there. Stoicism does not fight lust by repression. It heals lust through awareness. It teaches you to look at someone and ask, am I seeing this person as a human being, or just a means to satisfy something in me? Am I truly moved, or just trying to fill a moment of emptiness? Lust is not evil, but letting it dictate your emotional life is the fastest way to lose your ability to build a real relationship. And the most dangerous part, no one knows you're off course. Only you know when you look at someone and feel nothing but possession. The path to healing doesn't begin with quitting lust. It begins by seeing others with respect, learning to pause in front of a tempting glance and ask, what am I truly seeking? Learning not to feed your imagination with things that aren't real. Learning to return to the present where real people, real emotions, and real slowness exist. In the next part, I'll talk about the thing that causes millions to live with two faces, calm on the outside, addicted on the inside, pornography, and how it slowly corrodes your soul, one silent frame at a time. They don't know. No one knows. Your friends don't know. Your family doesn't know. Not your partner. Not even the person you sleep next to. Only you and the screen. Only you and a few minutes of release, followed by hours of emptiness, then days of telling yourself, "I won't do it again," then weeks, then the same loop. Arousal, release, regret, and back to arousal. Welcome to what the world calls adult entertainment. But Stoicism calls it by another name, a sweet door that leads to dependence. Pornography isn't like those serious sins people preach against. It doesn't hurt anyone directly, It isn't punished. It's even protected by personal freedom laws. You can watch it anytime, anywhere, on any device. In fact, major platforms want it to slip into your eyes by recommending more extreme, shocking, addictive content. No one condemns you, but something inside you is quietly weakening. Your will. Have you ever noticed yourself doing these things? You can't fall asleep unless you watch something first. Whenever you're bored or stressed, your hand reaches for your phone. You have a partner, but you still can't stop watching porn. You know it's draining you, yet you can't break free. You're not alone. Millions of people around the world are stuck in this cycle, including the most respectable, well-educated, and disciplined ones. This doesn't just happen to the morally weak. It happens to anyone who has let desire grow quietly without being confronted. Stoicism won't shame you, but Stoicism will make you face the consequences. Pornography distorts your perception of beauty. It makes you compare real people to actors. It trains your brain to crave extreme sensations while becoming numb to real connection. It kills your ability to love through real presence, because your mind has been programmed to respond only to what's unreal. It's not just a physical act, it's a mental pattern. It teaches your brain a reflex. When you're lonely, tired, under pressure, reach for pleasure to numb the pain. And before you know it, you're addicted. You still go to work, still go about your day. But every night, you return to the screen like a quiet ritual. You start losing connection with real people because no one feels as exciting as what you've seen hundreds of times. You feel your self-control slipping, but you're too ashamed to speak up. And that is when you begin to lose true freedom. Epictetus once said, "We are not chained by others. We are chained by what we repeat and cannot stop." Pornography isn't wrong by society's standards, but it is a form of dependency, and any dependency makes you weaker. Think about it. What will your life look like if you keep this habit for another 10 years? How will you view love when your mind has been shaped by thousands of fake images? How will you treat your partner if you've forgotten what real intimacy even feels like? And most terrifying of all, what will you teach your children if you haven't yet taught yourself how to master your own desire? Claire, the woman we've mentioned, once dated a man who was successful, calm, and thoughtful. But after a few months, she ended the relationship, not out of anger, but because she felt like she was living with two people, one version of him during the day, clear, present, and another that disappeared at night, behind a closed door and a pair of headphones. She didn't blame him. She was simply heartbroken knowing that in that room, she was no longer the only woman in his mind. Here's the truth. You cannot build a real relationship when your heart is already too full of imaginary ones. And you cannot demand real love if you haven't yet faced your own dependency. Stoicism teaches us, not everyone who's alive is truly living. Only those who stay awake to themselves are truly alive. Want to quit pornography? Don't start by deleting apps or forcing yourself to resist. Start with one honest question. What am I really seeking there that I haven't found in real life? Maybe it's comfort. Maybe it's control. Maybe it's escape. Then go and truly heal those things. Learn to speak about it. Learn to reconnect. Learn to breathe deeply again. Learn to return to your real body and real love. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to stop hiding from yourself. In the next part, we'll talk about something even heavier, but it must be spoken with respect. Broken boundaries inside families, and why incest is one of the deepest wounds a soul can carry. There are wounds that people don't put into words, not because there aren't words, but because there's too much shame, confusion, and a lump in the throat. A girl once wrote in her journal, "I didn't know I had been abused until I grew up and realized no one else had been loved that way by their biological father." This isn't a distant story. It's not something that only happens in psychological thrillers. It's real, quietly unfolding in many homes, and its damage isn't marked by blood, bruise, or visible injuries. It lies in this: the one who was supposed to protect you was the first to shatter your sense of safety. Incest is not simply a wrongful act, it's a complete collapse of trust. It's not just a violation of the body, it's the distortion of the very structure of family, a place meant to heal, not harm. Stoicism doesn't speak much about this topic, not because it's unimportant, but because it demands double clarity: clarity to avoid quick judgment, clarity to stop covering it up. If you are someone who has been violated by a family member, a father, uncle, brother, stepmother, or anyone related by blood or care, I will not ask you to forgive. I will not force you to name it before you're ready. I just want you to know it was not your fault. You don't deserve to live with self-disgust. You don't deserve to carry the weight alone because no one would believe you. You don't have to stay silent just to protect the family's honor. You deserve just one thing: to be seen. Stoicism is not a shield against emotion. Stoicism is a foundation for standing back up after things that feel unspeakable. You don't need to forgive if it still hurts. You don't need to normalize what happened. You only need to face this one truth: I was deeply wounded, but I will not let that define me forever. If you are someone who has caused such harm, even once, under any circumstance, I do not have the right to condemn you, but I will not hide this truth. You took something sacred from another person, not just their body, but their sense of safety in their own home, their ability to trust family, their capacity to love and connect later in life without disgust or fear. And if even a flicker of awareness remains in you, then the first step is not asking for forgiveness. It is facing the truth without denial, without excuses. Epictetus once said, "No one can correct a wrong if they continue denying they were ever wrong." In Stoicism, real atonement does not come from words. It comes from rebuilding your inner ethics, not just from never repeating the harm, but from living the rest of your life with deep awareness of the damage you once caused. Now, back to the one who was hurt, possibly you. You may have been forced into silence. You may have been told, "You imagined it. Don't make a big deal." That happened a long time ago. You may have doubted yourself. Was he a bad kid? Was it because of how I dressed? Did I just imagine all of this? Let me say this to you with full sincerity. No, it was not your fault. Not ever. No one has the right to touch your body without your true consent. And children, or anyone in a vulnerable position, are never willing participants. That must be stated clearly. No sugarcoating, nor justification. And if you've lived with shame and self-loathing over something that happened in your past, let me say something you may have never heard. You survived. You are stronger than you think, and you deserve to heal. Stoicism is not about numbness. It is the strength to live on without letting the past define you. To hold on to clarity, integrity, and self-respect. Even when those things were once distorted by someone you trusted most. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Healing means knowing what happened, and still choosing not to let it destroy who you are at your core. You may need time. You may need help. You may need the support of a therapist, a wise friend, or a safe space to slowly unravel the fear. Give yourself permission to walk that path slowly. Is fine. Just don't give up. And if you're still listening now, I believe this. You are on your way back to a version of yourself that no one can take from you. In the next part, we'll talk about another form of distortion, one that society doesn't see as a heavy sin, but that deeply embeds itself in our psychology, prostitution, and how the human body becomes a commodity in exchange for false worth. We'll continue this journey not to dig up the past, but to reclaim something many have lost: dignity. There is a kind of suffering that no one dares to name. It's not in crime statistics. It's not in medical records. It's not illegal yet. It slowly makes people feel like they're slipping away from their own dignity. It happens when someone, either by choice or circumstance, begins to use their body as a form of exchange, to make a living, to survive, to keep someone from leaving, or simply to be noticed, even for just a moment. Prostitution, the word carries weight, but if we look closely, many people are living a kind of spiritual prostitution without even knowing it. Not everyone who sells their body is a prostitute. There are people who go to work every day, dress professionally, are well educated, have families, yet use their bodies as a tool to bargain for attention, posting revealing photos not out of joy, but to get someone to care, staying in a disrespectful relationship just to keep feeling wanted, giving their body to someone they have no emotional connection with, just to escape loneliness. No one is forcing them, but the unconscious hunger to be loved has led them to place a price tag on themselves. Stoicism does not condemn this. Stoicism simply asks, what are you trading away, and what are you truly getting in return? Epictetus once wrote, if you're going to sell your soul, at least know what it's worth. You can make money off beauty. You can become famous for being sexy. You can be praised for being bold, confident, and in control. But at some point, you'll have to sit down and ask yourself, does any of this help me feel deeply loved? Does it help me sleep peacefully at night? Does it make me feel like I truly matter, or just like a pretty shell that people use and leave? Prostitution doesn't only live in bars or red light districts. It lives in late-night inbox messages. It lives in secret exchanges of favors for opportunity. It lives in relationships where one person uses sex to hold on because they don't believe their true self is enough. It's a way of redefining one's worth in the most misguided way. You're not wrong for wanting to be desired. We're human. We're wired to be touched, to be held, to be loved. But when you tie your entire worth to physical appeal, you turn yourself into a product with an expiration date. And when that date comes, you'll feel panic, emptiness, and self-doubt. There's a real story about a woman who worked in prostitution for over 7 years. When asked, what made you stop? She didn't talk about morals or legality. She simply said, because I realized people were willing to pay to touch me, but no one was willing to look me in the eyes and ask, are you okay? And that is the first thing prostitution takes away. The gaze. Not the gaze of lust, but the gaze of understanding, of respect, of true connection. Stoicism doesn't say you must guard your body like a temple. It only asks, are you using your body to serve your dignity, or trading your dignity for a sliver of attention? You are not a product. You are a human being with depth, with emotions, with inherent value, and you deserve to be loved in a way that doesn't require you to sell anything to make someone stay. Maybe you once believed, if I'm attractive enough, they won't leave. But in the end, what holds a relationship together isn't the body, it's the character. And if someone only stays because you're hot, open-minded, or good in bed, the truth is, they were never really there. You just hadn't realized it yet. You may have made mistakes. You may have let someone in because you feared being alone. You may have used your body as a ticket into someone's life. But today, you have the right to choose differently. Stoicism teaches this. No one is born without dignity. People simply forget it every time they let desire lead instead of reason. You don't need to dress a certain way. You don't need to hide yourself. You just need one thing: to know what's leading you. If it's awareness, you're protecting yourself. If it's inner chaos, even if you're loved, you still won't feel safe. The journey back to dignity is not about quitting sex. It's about putting sex back where it belongs. A sacred, meaningful part of life, rooted in real commitment. You deserve to be loved with clear eyes. You deserve to be held not as possession, but as support. You deserve to be remembered, not for how great you were last night, but for who you are, deep down. In the final part of this script, I will walk with you through everything we've covered, and point to the real path out of the invisible loops that desire builds. We've walked a difficult road together, a journey not made for those who only want to hear what's easy, not for those who like to give advice without ever looking inward. This journey is for you if you've had the courage to ask yourself, am I truly living, or just living the way society allows me to? We've looked straight into 6 of the deepest sexual sins, not in a religious sense, but in the Stoic sense. Any action that makes you lose control over yourself is a sin. Adultery, when you betray a promise you once gave freely. Casual sex, when you use the body to fill an emptiness that hasn't even been named. Lust, when your gaze overrides dignity. Pornography, when pleasure hijacks the mind without you even realizing. Incest, when sacred boundaries are broken in the very place that was meant to be safe. And prostitution, when you put a price on yourself just to get someone to stay, even for a night. No one is completely innocent, and no one is entirely lost. But here's something you must remember if you don't want to fall again. Every time you let desire lead you, you take one more step away from the most grounded version of yourself. Stoicism doesn't forbid love. It doesn't ask you to live coldly. Stoicism simply asks, does this love make you stronger? Do you respect yourself more after the desire fades? And if the answer is no, then it isn't love. It's a flood of emotion, one you haven't yet learned to witness without drowning in it. You might ask, is sex wrong? My answer with full awareness is, no, sex is not wrong. It's a natural part of being human. It is sacred, powerful, and can become a deeply bonding experience between two souls. But when it is detached from awareness, when it becomes a tool to gain attention, to entertain, to manipulate, to keep someone, or to forget someone else, then it's no longer sex. It becomes a form of escape, and you cannot escape and be fully alive at the same time. What weakens a person is not that they have desire, it's that they let desire take the wheel. You don't have to reject pleasure. You only have to learn to observe it like a gatekeeper guarding your own mind. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not follow the first thought that arises. Watch it, question it, and only keep what makes you a better version of yourself." That is the key to real freedom. You can have sex. You can fall in love. You can be moved by desire. But if at the end of the day you still stand firm, still respect yourself, still look in the mirror without shame, then you're living rightly. But if not, then no matter how satisfied you feel, no matter how desired you are, no matter how much attention you get, you will still feel like something inside you is being drained. Stoicism doesn't teach you how to be loved. It teaches you how to love yourself so clearly that no one can make you lose your self-respect. You can't stop people from leaving. You can't avoid being hurt. But you absolutely can protect your dignity, no matter who comes or goes. And that is true freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to not do what you'll regret. If you're tangled in a confusing relationship, If you're stuck in a porn habit you can't break. If you've ever let someone put a price on your body, if you've ever lied, betrayed, or lived a double life, I don't need you to tell me the details. I just need you to be honest with yourself. Right now, you can choose again. You don't need a dramatic reason. You just need to realize, I don't want to live like this anymore. And here's the miracle. The moment you awaken, your past no longer gets to define you. You could spend 10 years living wrong. But it only takes 1 minute to start living right. 1 minute to not hit play. 1 minute to say no. 1 minute to sit with yourself and ask, will I still respect myself after this decision? Sex doesn't steal your freedom. Only a lack of awareness does that. And you who have listened this far, I believe you already have the clarity it takes to reclaim the most valuable thing in your life, inner wholeness. In the final words of this video, I have nothing new to say. I just want to sit with you and repeat something that sounds simple, but many people have never truly heard. You still have a chance to live differently. You've just walked through nearly 60 minutes, not to learn something new, not to be reminded of what you already knew, and certainly not to sit through another lecture on how to live right. You stayed until this final minute, perhaps because something in you is tired of running. Maybe you've grown weary of pretending you're okay, weary of repeating shallow relationships that leave an even deeper void, weary of proving your worth through your body, your allure, or those openings that never reached your soul. If that's true, I don't need you to confess. I just need you to be honest with yourself. Because here's a simple truth. No one tells you you can begin again without starting over. You don't have to erase your past. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to act pure, righteous, or perfect. You only need one thing: to stop and no longer turn away from yourself. Stoicism doesn't promise that life will be easier. It won't take you to a land without desire or mistakes. It simply shows you a rocky path barefoot, but you'll know exactly where you're heading. That path isn't for everyone. Not for those who only want to be loved without responsibility. Not for those who blame the world, or culture, or lust, or say, this is just who I am. It's for those who are awake enough to ask, do I still want to live like this? If I were to leave this world tomorrow, would I feel I've lived in integrity with myself? You may have messed up. You may have betrayed. You may have lied. You may have let someone into your life for one night and carried the aftershocks for months. That's okay. You still deserve love. If you're learning how to love yourself with awareness, you still deserve to be touched if you know what you're giving, what you're keeping, and what you truly want from that moment. You still deserve to stay in someone's life if you no longer use your body as a ticket in, but use integrity as your foundation. And if no one has said this to you, let me be the first. You are not broken. You just were never taught how to protect the deepest parts of yourself. And now that you've heard it all, the only thing I hope you carry with you is not guilt. It is a return. A return to the purity you once had before the world pulled you away. A return to the courage in you that once longed to be loved sincerely. A return to your reason, the gatekeeper of your soul when desire comes knocking. You don't have to fight desire. You just have to become stronger than it. Every day, ask yourself this one small question. When you're about to click on that video, when you're about to enter a vague relationship, when you feel yourself pulled by someone's glance, am I living in alignment with my true dignity? And if the answer is not yet, then give yourself the grace to stop, not out of fear of judgment, but because you deserve a deeper life. Healing doesn't come from one grand decision. It comes from tiny choices made in awareness, again and again. Choose to turn it off. Choose not to reply to that message. Choose to be alone tonight, so tomorrow, you can show up clearer with someone else. Choose to slow down, to know what you truly need, what you fear, and what you're really searching for in each touch. And if you can do that, little by little, you'll no longer be a slave to desire. You'll be someone who protects their dignity, even in a world that sells everything cheap. As we close this video, I have no more advice. I just want you to know, Stoicism isn't a cold philosophy meant for the strong. It is a quiet light for those who have been weak, wrong, afraid, but no longer want to live that way. If you're still here, I believe that light already exists in you. And if one day you want to share this with someone else, share it not to teach them how to live, but to say, I was once lost, and I found my way back. If we're meant to meet again, we will. In another video where we'll look at a new question, how do we heal the deepest wounds, especially the ones we inflicted on ourselves? See you soon.